Hello guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to dual boot the latest version of macOS, which is currently macOS Sonoma and your Windows 10 or Windows 11. Now you can run macOS Sonoma as your main operating system and get rid of every other operating system in your PC, or you could also run macOS Sonoma alongside your Windows OS, so whichever you prefer is fine. Now these are the requirements. First, we need macOS Sonoma installer file. This file size is around 16 GB, which is what we're going to use for the installation. Next, we need OpenCore EFI configuration file. Next, we need Balena Etcher. We need MiniTool Partition Wizard. We need Explorer++. We need GenSMBIOS. We need ProperTree. And lastly, we also need a flash drive of around 32 GB. Now, I'll provide the links to each and every one of these files in the video description so you can download yourself. Now, open Task Manager by holding Ctrl+Shift Escape. And here go to performance and then select your CPU. Now you should see your CPU name here. If you're using an AMD Ryzen 5 or Ryzen 7, you're good, but if you're using an Intel processor, maybe Intel Core i5 4th gen or 6th gen or whatever generation, Intel CPUs have a code name associated with it, so you need to confirm what is your CPU name so you know the right EFI OpenCore file to download. Now click on performance under Task Manager, and here you can see the CPU details. Now you can see I'm using Intel Core i5 4570. This means this is a 4th generation CPU starting with 4, and this is a Core i5 CPU. 4th generation CPUs are called Haswell, so the code name for my CPU is Haswell. So when we are downloading the OpenCore EFI configuration file, we are going to be downloading EFI configuration file for Haswell, which is what we are using. So find the name that matches with your processor so you can know the file to download when the time comes. Now after confirming that, we can head to our browser. First, we're going to download macOS Sonoma installer file. I'll provide the link in the video description so you can head directly to this page and then download. For our OpenCore EFI configuration file, you're going to get it from Olarilla. I'll also provide the link in the video description. Now scroll down and then download the EFI configuration file based on your PC. Now if you're using a desktop just like I am, then you should download OpenCore desktop. The EFI is under OpenCore desktop, but if you're using a laptop, then it's under OpenCore notebook. So in this case, I'm using a desktop. Now you can see different configuration files based on your CPU code name. Now I am using an AMD Ryzen 5, so you can see for desktop AMD Bulldozer, Jaguar and Ryzen Threadripper as well. You can download the EFI here. But if you're using an Intel processor, for example 4th gen Intel processors are called Haswell, then you can download for Haswell here. Same with Coffee Lake, which is 8th gen Intel processor, so just check the code name of your Intel processor and then download the right file. But for me, I'm just going to download for Ryzen. So if you're using a Ryzen processor, then you most likely would use the last one. So let's click on here to download. Next, we are going to download Balena Etcher, which is what we are going to use to create a bootable disk. Download Etcher, and then download Etcher for Windows since we are using a Windows PC. Download. Next, we are going to download ProperTree. So let's open a new tab and then search for ProperTree. Click on the link that heads to GitHub. Now click on code and then download zip. Next, we are going to download Explorer++. So search for Explorer++. And then click on the first link that heads to explorer++.com. Click on download 64 bits. Next, we're going to download GenSMBIOS, which is what we're going to use to generate a unique serial for our Mac. So search for GenSMBIOS, head to GitHub page here, click on code and then download zip. And lastly, we're going to download MiniTool Partition Wizard. So open a new tab and then search for MiniTool Partition Wizard. Download now, and it should start downloading. Now the links to each and every one of these files will be provided in the video description so you can download yourself. Now these are all the files we need for now. and you also need your flash drive of at least 32 gigabytes. I will provide the link in the video description so you can get from Amazon if you want. Now let's close this and then open our download folder. Alright, so we have our files here. Now this is MiniTool Partition Wizard, this is Balena Etcher, this is GenSMBIOS, this is Explorer++, this is ProperTree, this is our EFI OpenCore configuration file for Ryzen CPU, this is macOS Sonoma Image File. Now we are first going to start with installing Balena Etcher. Alright, here we go. Now click on Flash from File and then locate your download folder, select Sonoma installer file of around 15.8 gigabytes you downloaded, open, and now click on select target. But in this case we have to connect our flash drive, so I'm just going to do that. So you can see my flash drive is now showing here. I'm just going to select it and then click on select one and then click on flash. So it will start flashing macOS Sonoma into our flash drive. Now while this is running, we could work on other things and get our EFI ready. So let's head back to our download folder. The next thing we have to do is to extract our OpenCore EFI configuration file. So let's extract files. Now let's open the extracted folder and then copy our EFI folder right here. Let's copy it to our download folder so we can work directly from there. Paste it there. Now we can delete the softwares we don't need, like Balena Etcher and our configuration file, or maybe just move it to another folder so it doesn't confuse you. So we have our EFI here, and if you open it, you're going to see boot and OC. Under boot you can see boot x64.efi, and under OC you can see configurations right here. Our text is here and many other things. So let's head back to our download folder. The next thing we have to do is to apply patch to it based on the processor you're using. So first let's extract ProperTree, extract files. Now open ProperTree, open, and then run the Windows batch file right here. Run as administrator, so just right click and then run as administrator, and it should open up ProperTree just like this. You can see this window right here. Now click on File and then click on Open. Locate your download folder, locate the EFI folder we moved, and then open OC, and you should find config here, config.plist. This is our configuration file right here. Click on Open, and it should load up all the settings of our configuration file. So I'm just going to drop down these settings. You can see them. Now let's head back to our browser and then let's head to Dortania guide, which is basically the guide for setting up a Hackintosh. Now this guide is very important if you are trying to build up your EFI from scratch, but this time we're using an EFI from Olarilla, so we can skip all this step. But there is just one last step, and this step is for those using AMD processors. Like me, I'm using an AMD Ryzen 5 1500X, so this step I would have to apply this step. But if you're using an Intel processor, then you can skip this part to the next section. So now you can see that we have to modify our EFI configuration based on the CPU cores in our processor. So in my case, my CPU has 4 cores and 8 threads. So if I go to Task Manager and then I go to Performance, click on CPU, you should see under cores I have 4 cores and 8 logical processors, which is the threads. Now it may be different for you depending on the processor, but this step only applies to those using AMD Ryzen. So if you're using an Intel processor, you have no business with this step. So now let's head here, and you can see under root we should select kernel, and under kernel we should select patch. So if we go to our configuration file from ProperTree, we can see kernel here, and then under kernel we could just close down these other windows here, and you should see patch. Now under patch we have to make few changes. You can see we need to modify the patch by changing the default core count to B8, and then our cores on our PC, and then the rest of the lines. So in my case I have 4 cores and 8 threads, So this is going to be B80400000000. So we're just going to copy this. I'm going to copy the first line right here, copy, head to ProperTree right here, and then you can see replace down here. Select it. Now let's paste it there, and then replace 08 with your processor cores. In my case, this is 04, and hit enter. We can close for 0 and then head to 1. You can see 1 right here. Select the second one, BA08 again, replace, paste it there, replace 08 with your processor cores, 04 in my case, and then we can close 1 and then head to 2, replace as well. Then we'll copy the third row, copy, paste there as well, replace 08 with our processor cores, and then do that to the last one as well. Now, like I said earlier, this step is only for AMD processors. So if you're using an Intel processor, you have no business with this. Now, after doing this, we can click on File and then Save. Now we can close ProperTree for now, and we can head on with the installation. Let's head back to our download folder. Now we can delete ProperTree and the zip file as well, or just move it to another folder. Next, we have to create a unique serial for our macOS machine, and to do that, we are going to extract GenSMBIOS, extract files. Let's open the extracted folder, open, and then run Windows batch file right here, GenSMBIOS. Double click on it, and it should load up. In some cases, you may get a prompt to install Python, which you can just proceed with entering Y, and it should install Python, but we are good. Now enter 1 to install and update Mac serial, and then hit enter. Hit enter. And then enter 2 to select config plist. Hit enter. Now let's head back to our download folder, locate our EFI folder, open OC, and then drag configuration file right here with the name config, and then drop it on our SMBIOS. Hit enter. And you can see the current plist is now showing the directory right here. Now enter 3 to generate SMBIOS, and then hit enter. Now we're going to generate SMBIOS for Mac Pro 7.1, which should be compatible with macOS Sonoma. I would also leave a link to the SMBIOS you should use in the video description, and then hit enter, and it should generate the unique serial for your machine. Now hit enter to return. Now we can close this, head back to our download folder. So we are done with GenSMBIOS. Now we are waiting for our file to finish writing into our flash drive. Now head to your search bar and then search for disk partition, and then click on create and format hard disk partitions. So we have to figure out where we want to install macOS Sonoma. Okay, so from what we can see here, disk 0 right here is our current hard drive with Windows 10, and this is my M.2 with around 120 gigabytes. Disk 1 is my backup drive of around 465 gig, and disk 2 right here is our flash drive. So if we open this PC, you can see this is my backup drive, and it has more space for anything I want to do because my main drive has just 17 gig free. So I would want to install macOS Sonoma on my backup drive, and I would still want to retain Windows on my main drive, which is fine. But in your case, you may have just one drive and you want to install macOS Sonoma alongside your Windows there. In that case, you can just right click and then click on shrink volume, and then set how much space you want to shrink. I'm just going to give it around 100 gigabytes and then shrink. So this is going to create a free space for installing macOS Sonoma, so you can maintain your Windows installation and also run macOS Sonoma as well. But if you want to install just macOS Sonoma and then get rid of your Windows, then when the installation begins, you can just clear out your Windows instead. but in this case we're going to be able to boot with both Windows and Mac OS. Now you can see 100 gig of unallocated storage. Now we can right click on new simple volume, next, and then give it a name. I can just call this Mac OS. So when we are running the installation, we are going to install Mac OS Sonoma to this partition we just allocated. You can do it wherever you want as long as you have enough storage. I would recommend at least 80 gigabytes. Now let's wait for Balena Etcher to finish writing data to our flash drive. Now after completing the process, click on cancel, close Balena Etcher, and then let's head back to our download folder. Now install MiniTool Partition. Continue with the free edition, next. And it should start downloading. Now click on finish. Okay, so if you look down here, you can see disk 1, which is my SSD 120 gig running Windows 10. Disk 2 is my backup drive with the partition backup, and another partition macOS where we intend to install macOS. And then disk 3 right here is a removable disk with the icon right here. This is the EFI partition of the disk, and this is the partition that has macOS installer files. Now we have to mount the EFI partition so we can move our EFI files here. So right click and then click on change letter, assign a new letter to it. I'm just going to call it X. Okay, and then apply the changes. Okay, let's close this. Head back to our download folder. Now extract Explorer++. Open the extracted folder and then right click on Explorer++ and then run as administrator. Okay, now go to this PC and then locate EFI X, which is the letter we allocated to the EFI partition of our flash drive. So open it and delete everything inside. Now locate your download folder and then copy the EFI we were working on. Copy, and then we have to paste it in our EFI X on our flash drive. Paste. Now we can close Explorer++. Close this. Now we can restart our PC and start the installation. Now hold F8, F12 or delete to boot into your BIOS. This may be different depending on the PC you're using. Change setup configuration from RAID to AACI and also disable secure boot. Now we can save changes and then restart our PC. Hold F8 to open boot options and then select UEFI SanDisk Partition 1, which is my flash drive. It will be different in your case. First, we're going to reset NVRAM. So select reset NVRAM and then hit enter. You can see OpenCore is now set at the top of our boot options. Now select install macOS Sonoma. Now select a language for the installation and next. Next, go to disk utility so we can erase the hard drive. And up there you can see macOS, which is the drive we allocated earlier. So select your drive which you want to use to install macOS and then click on erase. Set a name and then set the format to APFS, which is the format which macOS works with. I'm just going to name it macOS 14 and then erase. Now click on done. Let's go back. Select install macOS Sonoma, continue. Continue. Now agree to the terms by clicking on agree. Select the hard drive which we erased earlier, macOS 14. Continue and it should start installing. Now this process will take around an hour or less. It may be even more depending on your PC resources. It may restart severally while installing, but you just have to wait. And the installation is complete. Now you can set up based on your personal preference. You can set your username, your password, and every other details. So basically, this is how to install macOS Sonoma on your Windows PC or do a boot macOS Sonoma on your Windows PC. You can see everything is working fine. Now we're going to go to about this Mac, and you can see my graphics card is showing right there, AMD Radeon RX 470 8GB, and the version is macOS 14.4.1. Now one last thing before we can say we are done. The EFI we are currently booting with is still on our flash drive, and we have to move it from our flash drive to our main drive, and to do that we need a software called ESP Mounter Pro. So head to your Chrome browser and then search for ESP Mounter Pro. Let's just search for ESP Mounter Pro eTech box, and then click on the link to my website right here, and then click on download, and it should start downloading. The file size is quite small. After downloading, we can close our browser and then run ESP Mounter Pro from down here, or just go to your download folder, run it, and then click on open. Now if you get any security prompt where it refuses to open, simply go to system settings and then go to privacy and security, scroll down, and you should see a prompt where you're going to see allow ESP Mounter Pro to run. That is because it is from an unidentified developer, so make sure to do that if it is not running. And then up here you can see the icon for ESP Mounter Pro, so click on it, and right here you can see this is the EFI on our flash drive. So just click on mount and then click on open volume, and you can see this is our EFI right here. Let's head back there and then click on show all disk, and then you should scroll down and you would find an empty EFI partition on your main drive where you're running Mac from, and you should see the EFI partition somewhere around here. So in my case, this is the EFI partition which I'm going to open. Now you shouldn't get lots of options like this. The reason why I'm getting this is because I have lots of hard drives on my PC. Now I can copy the EFI from my flash drive and then paste it in my EFI in my hard drive. Now I can close both of them, eject it from my screen, and everything else should work fine. Now we can restart and everything else should work fine. Now you can see I am now getting the option to boot into either Windows or macOS, so I can choose whichever I want, but in this case we are booting into macOS. So basically this is how to install macOS Sonoma on your Windows PC. If this video was helpful, kindly hit the subscribe button and turn on your post notification. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.